Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Dale Barzy. As always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe. Leave us a comment and let us know what you think. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey, from students to retirees and anywhere in between. And today, I'm very, very pleased to welcome Maranda Kearse. Miranda is a nurse. She is an entrepreneur. She has been in nursing for the last 20 years. In both long-term and acute care, she has specialized focus in skilled nursing, rehabilitation, hospice, respite, and palliative care. And she has extensive experience as a director of nursing, an MDS coordinator, QA and compliance coordinator, wound care nurse, infection preventionist, and staff nurse. She currently holds certificates in infection control and Medicare set-asides. Aequitas Consulting is a company she launched in 2021 with the hope that she would make a positive difference for families and patients who had received less than adequate healthcare services. And she remains clinically active in long-term care and continues to provide quality bedside care to all her patients. And Miranda is extremely proud. I smiled when I saw this, Miranda. She's extremely proud to be able to showcase her example in caring for the elderly, with 4 of her 7 children pursuing nursing careers. Thank you,
Yes.
Miranda. Thank you so very much for that. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
My absolute pleasure. My absolute pleasure. So tell me, what brought you to nursing in the first place? Why are you a nurse?
I chose nursing because it's always been in me to help other people, and I've just always been an empathetic person.
Yeah. Okay. So you always wanted to do this. When you got to it, though, was it what you thought?
Certain aspects were, and certain aspects weren't. Long, hard hours, holidays, weekends makes it difficult with small children, but the part where you get to care for somebody and you get to, experience the compassion that comes with nursing, it made it all worth it.
Yeah. That's nothing compares really to that.
No.
Nothing compares to that. But so what were the challenges for you, if any? As you know, when you came into nursing, how did it challenge you?
I think just the aspect of practicing in different areas,
Mhm.
certifications in different areas. It's a consistent learning process. Everything in medicine consistently changes. And so I think just keeping up and going the extra mile to get the certifications for extra
Yeah.
parts
Yeah.
of nursing,
Yeah. And that keeping up thing can be, can really get to you. But
Yeah.
that's the good thing about it. But and that's the thing about it that challenges us a lot too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. So you've worked in different areas. You mostly in long-term care. Yes.
Yes, mostly in long-term care. I took some breaks here and there to do med surg. I did oncology for a few years, cardiac and telemetry, ER, but I always went back to long-term care.
Yeah. What is it about the elderly that draws you?
I think that they are very wise. They've seen way more than we have. And I also think that, they're deserving of that great care after taking care of people their whole lives.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you said is that first of all, I forgot to mention that you're also a legal nurse consultant.
Yes.
Mhm. But one of the things that you mentioned is that you started your consulting company because you wanted to make a positive difference for people who had received less than adequate healthcare services. Do you see that a lot in long-term care? Or what
You
you think of?
do, you do see it a lot in long-term care. A lot of it is short staffing. The training is subpar. The
Mhm,
compassion is lacking. And many years ago, I had to help place my own grandmother in a nursing home,
mhm.
but I didn't want her to be in any nursing home. So I moved her across state lines to be in the nursing home that I worked in. So I could not only take care of her, but also see um, that she was safe when I wasn't there. I knew exactly who was taking care of her. And most people don't have that option. And by the time something goes wrong, it's too late.
Yeah,
And in the cases that I've reviewed, I find it very disheartening when you don't see any compassion in any of the record.
yeah.
Not that that happens every time, but more often than not.
Often, often. And having worked in long-term care, I would have to say that I agree with you. And in thinking about this, it occurs to me that maybe, a lot of it, or some of it perhaps I should say, not maybe not a lot, but some of that I think comes from the way nursing in general views long-term care. Um,
Yes.
we view it as somehow less than.
Hmm.
And so you talk about subpar training and all of that, and that comes out of our own view.
Right. And I've heard a lot of nurses in the hospitals speak about nursing home nurses that way.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a reason they're in the nursing home or things
mhm,
like that. And it's just a different aspect of care, and that's all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is why I like speaking. Well, I like speaking to all nurses, but when I get to speak to long-term care nurses, because somehow we've got to change that view. Because as you said, those patients and residents that you in long-term care deserve just as high a level of care as anyone else.
Right.
Right? But if we don't give the caregivers the respect and the support that they deserve, they cannot pass it on to the people they're taking care of. And,
Right.
and, and I think this is why you see such a lack of compassion and frustration in that.
Right. And I think it's partly that and just the overall sense of burnout or, because nursing is difficult with long
Yeah.
hours and
Mhm.
and things. You miss a lot of activities with family and holidays. And so I think it's a combination of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what aspects of nursing life, you think you'd like to see change? How we could change it?
I think nursing just is what it is. It's going to be long hours. It's going to be the holidays and weekends because it's a 24-hour
Mm-hmm.
industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a lot of healthcare could change with that compassion piece. It would change a lot of the outcomes based on priorities that the nurses have. If they
Yeah.
had more compassion, their priorities might change.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. I'm sorry about that. And so you've done a lot. You've done a lot. You're a legal nurse consultant. You've done all the things in long-term care, hospice, respite. You still keep your toe in the river, so to speak, and you're an entrepreneur. So what would you say is your greatest achievement so far?
My greatest achievement, I think honestly, in looking back and in seeing the way it is more common now, I think my greatest achievement was to keep my compassion throughout my entire career
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
try to do things that bettered myself and bettered the abilities that I had to give that care and compassion.
Mm-hmm. 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 And that is huge. I mean, when you articulate it, when you say it to someone listening, they may not see or understand just how big that is, but that is huge.
Yeah.
Because as you say, it takes so much out of you that to be able to keep that consistently throughout a 20-year career is no mean feat. It's no mean feat. And that is exemplified. As a matter of fact, you just said you have 4 of your children following in your footsteps. You had
I
to have
do.
set some example, madam.
When my children were little, I actually took them to the nursing homes with me, and they would
Mhm.
help with activities or visit with people. And so they grew to love elderly people just as much as I do. And so, yeah, I have 4 children so far pursuing nursing careers, and 2 of the last 3 are considering it. So,
Wow. Oh, wow. I mean, I can't think, in your bio, I see that you had a Daisy Award and all of that. Well, that's stacked up to just having your children follow you.
yeah, it makes me very proud.
Can you imagine that? I can imagine that because it validates what you have done all these years.
Yeah, I actually have a teenager that still asks if she can go to work with me. So, and most of the time, if I can make it happen, I do.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. But we're talking about, one of the things that I see, I am a 40-year plus, right? And what I've seen is that nursing has changed. It has exploded. And especially in the last 15, 20 years, nursing has just come, I don't know, something huge. I mean, when I first became a nurse, the prospect for being a nurse was that you were at the bedside.
Right.
And pretty much that was it. Regardless of what the institution was, it was institutional work. Now we're everywhere. So what do you see? What do you think nursing will look like in about 10 years or so?
There's just so many new avenues for nurses. You do think of nurses at the bedside, but they're at insurance companies and, all sorts of different avenues. And I think hopefully it will open the door for nurses who want to do something besides bedside, and hopefully maybe keep that compassionate piece in there without the feelings of burnout or,
Mhm,
day
mhm,
in, day out mindset.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are some nurses, we're talking about these days of how technology is how big it's becoming. And I see a lot of articles and talk about how it will impact nursing. What do you think?
I've seen some of that too. I feel like there are good parts to it and negative parts to it. I've seen some stuff about AI doing assessments and things like that. I think in that regard, it would have a negative impact. You have to lay
Mhm.
eyes on your patient to truly get
Yeah,
the picture and not use computer
yeah.
to do it for you. However, it does make it easier. Charting is a lot easier now. Navigating through a chart is much
Mhm.
easier now with the technology. So I think there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we're going to go through a bit of a birthing process before we get to settle to where, a happy medium,
Right, right.
if that's possible, if that's possible. So what advice though would you give? Well, what advice do you give your children? They want to be nurses. So I was going to ask you what advice you give to someone who wants to be a nurse, but what advice did you give them?
I told them if you want to be a nurse, you have to want to do it. You can't do it as a backup plan because that is where the compassionate piece goes missing. You have to want it. And nursing school is not a walk in the park either. So if
Hmm?
you're going to go through it, make sure that is what you want, or you will struggle and then you're going to hate your career.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you don't like you end up not liking what could be a very rewarding career. So if it's
right,
not for you, it's not for you. But if it
right.
is, I get that,
If it
right?
is, jump in with both feet.
Indeed. So typically, one of the things we talk about, because I talk about it a lot and I speak to every single nurse about it, because again, when I became a nurse, this thing of self-care was, it was, if you said something like that, it would probably, speaking a bad word. Now we're recognizing that really we have, what we're doing is giving, yes, but we have to give to ourselves. We have to give to ourselves. So what do you do for self-care?
That's a good question. Um, I've just found that the things that help me were doing things maybe out of the ordinary, but that I wanted to do or I enjoyed to do. It doesn't have to be necessarily a spa day. But if I enjoy doing the wound care piece, then I'm going to go and get my certification because that's what makes me happy and it makes, my position that much more rewarding to me.
Hmm. Hmm. So that's the kind of thing you do for self-care. Okay.
Yeah,
But
follow the avenues to make me happy.
sometimes really self-care is work.
Right,
Sometimes it's doing the work to get something out of the way or to get something, as you say, to enhance where you are, to enhance how you stand. So yeah,
right.
sometimes that's just what it is. And I
Yes,
see that you like to go out fishing and camping and hunting and boating and
yes.
you're my kind of
I do that
gal.
for self-care too.
You're my kind of gal. I love it. I love it. Anything outdoors, I say, it's my church.
Yes.
So here's the thing, Miranda. I started recognizing that I could recognize a nurse without anybody telling me that that person was a nurse. Um, that recognition started creeping up with me that I could see that. Uh, and I wasn't quite sure what it was that would make me know that that person was a nurse. 9 times out of 10, it turns out I was right. And so I started asking the question, if you could describe what for you is the most essential quality of a nurse, what would that word be? In one word. If you could do it in one word, what would that word be?
Well, I'd probably always go back to compassion. That
Compassion. Mhm,
person is compassionate about other people. I think that that would show that they're a
mhm,
nurse and they're a good
mhm.
nurse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we're learning also to extend some of that compassion to ourselves as part of our self-care and as
Right.
part of our, a part of our recognizing that we are not robots. And we're not,
Yeah.
we're people with feelings and we struggled to get to where we are, and we need
Yes,
to be
absolutely.
compassionate to ourselves sometimes. This thing about nurses eating their young. I, you know, I I wish that we could get past that. I don't know how we will get past that. Do you have any ideas?
In my personal experience, I've tried to teach the younger nurses or even the CNAs, here's the best way to do it, here's the easiest way to do it. If I'm going to pick on a younger nurse, it only makes my job more difficult and makes their job miserable. To make your job the easiest, you have to take care of the people that are
Yep.
helping you do your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know how to fix that, you know, but in my own experience, it's helped me to be able to teach them and help them try to get, the best tips and tricks and, happy environment. If you're going to work long hours, you want it
Yeah.
to be a good
Exactly.
shift.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. And I'm so happy that you articulated it like that, of taking care of the people that who are taking care of others, because that very often we recognize that we're there to take care of our patients, but we don't
Right.
recognize that we also need to take care of the rest of our team, you
Yes.
know. And we're not going to do a good job taking care of our patients if we're not taking care of each other and making that team work. So
Right.
I'm so happy that you articulated it um, like that. So, Miranda, what is your big vision? You are an entrepreneur. You have Aequitas LLC, right? Your legal nurse
Yes.
consultant. What's your big vision for this company?
I want to make a difference for people that have suffered injustices in the healthcare, specifically long-term care, because I see it all the time. And sometimes you're just in a position not to be able to change anything. You can't do anything. I could go to work and, and take exceptional care of my patient, but when I'm not there, that standard has to continue, and it doesn't always do that. And so I felt like my expertise and knowledge could be used on the back end or the legal end to help that justice come about.
What would you say is the most common thing that you see as a consultant?
Um, so far it has been a lot of falls and wound care issues, wounds that are not treated properly or treated timely, falls that are devastating, but that's not their first fall and no fall interventions were put in place. You know, it's just a very, if this one thing would have changed, the outcome would have been totally different, but it
Mhm,
ends up
mhm,
in a devastating outcome.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's a big thing. That's a huge thing. Um, and I don't know. I see in many cases that the regulations, especially surrounding falls and care, have changed over the years, and things that we used to do in terms of, let us say, fall prevention, for example, we don't do anymore. Not that I'm saying we should do them, because experience has taught us that some of those things that we were doing were actually more dangerous than they were. So we're not exactly helpful, let's put it that way.
Right, right,
But that does not mean then that we don't have recourse. And sometimes I think we act as though we have no recourse, but we're gonna fall. No, not necessarily.
right, right. And I think that a lot of times what I've seen is when the interventions aren't put in place, there's not a reason for it.
Mhm,
You know, somebody just didn't care enough to do it, or they're tired because it's long hours, or they're busy because of short staffing. But,
yeah,
you know,
but it didn't happen.
it's just a lack of, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lack of follow through, and it ends up being devastating for that person.
yeah, 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 yeah. And sometimes, sometimes it's a lack of education too.
Right, right. I find that a lot of the nurses in the cases that I've worked on have not necessarily known that this was a requirement or this is a requirement. So it looks like they ignored it, but maybe they didn't know.
They just didn't
Still
know.
didn't
Mhm.
happen and it still didn't get done, but
Yeah,
somebody there should have known,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
Exactly, exactly. Uh, um, and I said that because I have noticed that also. That's sometimes it's like uh they didn't know. And
Right.
so the question becomes, why didn't they know? Where was the failing? Why didn't they know?
Yes.
Why didn't they know? Miranda, before we go, is there any little gem you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, just that compassion is the bottom line in nursing. It has to stay there and it has to be a part of everyday nursing, no matter what avenue you're a nurse in. The empathy and compassion is the the foundation,
It's
I
the
believe.
bedrock, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. It is the bedrock. It is the bedrock. But thank you so much, Miranda. And you know what? I mean, I cannot congratulate you enough for having your children follow in your footsteps. I
Thank
don't know
you.
if congratulate is the word, but I am truly so impressed because, it is a hard job that you do.
It's
And
hard.
if in here we are in 2024, there are many other jobs that people can do that would bring them a decent living. So
Right.
to follow your mother So for several of your children to follow their mother into a hard job willingly
Right.
says a lot about you and who you are and what kind of nurse you have been. So thank you so very, very much for that.
Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.